uncensored. Welcome to COASTER-net Uncut.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois, joined once again by the Pokemaster himself, Mr. Danny Miller. Danny, how is it going?
Yeah, you'll have to excuse me if I just suddenly drop the call. I've got a Squirtle nearby, so I've got a Squirtle nearby, and even though I already have one, Squirtle's always my starter of choice, because I'm a turtle guy. I don't know if you guys know that, but I'm gonna keep an eye on this Squirtle over here. Everyone's going crazy with this phenomenon that's happened last week. You guys are seeing this a week or two after we record it, but this Pokemon Go is like a week old. And Andy, you're not even I'm from the heart of the Pokemon generation when it was big, 90s kid. You're not a 90s kid, but I know you've been getting into this, haven't you? Like the last day or two. You've been getting into this.
I don't know. I started playing yesterday, and I've been walking around trying to catch these damn things all, wherever they are. And I have never, now let me preface this by saying I've never watched a single episode of Pokemon. I've never owned a Pokemon game in my entire life. And I've never owned a Pokemon card in my entire life either. So this is my first experiences. And as I talk to you about it, you know all the names,
Well, then you should get off the servers and stop crashing the servers for people like myself who have been dreaming of this day for 20 years.
I don't know. But, it's kind of interesting that this hits at the time that, that it did because, Pokemon Go uses a lot of augmented reality inside the game that when you're actually capturing the Pokemon, you're doing it within this augmented reality setting. And tonight's topic is actually the new virtual reality craze that's been hitting theme parks. Yes. And also a little augmented reality, a little bit with Cedar Point as well, with their new Battle for Cedar Point game, that they're doing this augmented reality throughout their park as well. So
strange how it's like just aligning, like all this is just kind of the stars are aligning like all in a very short time frame. We've been hearing rumblings about the whole VR on roller coasters in the United States here the last few years. They tested it on Blue Fire at Europa Park a few years back, and that had very positive reviews. And we've been hearing that this was coming, and now all of a sudden it's like this virtual reality, this augmented reality is all of a sudden becoming, it's becoming a big thing. And I'll tell you something. It's really big in the theme parks too, and I think it's going to get bigger, especially with this whole Pokemon craze, because my sister and I, last weekend, Hershey Park, and I can't tell you how many people, like employees, were asking us if we were playing it when they saw us looking at our phones. We're in line for Fahrenheit, and we're queuing, and the people like two groups behind us that you line up with the switchbacks and everything, and all we hear is, "I can't catch this freaking Goldeen," and it's like, and then the group behind him is like, "Oh, you're trying to catch that Goldeen too?" Like people are doing this. And pro tip, the water park at Hershey Park, full of water-type Pokemon. We caught plenty. I caught a Staryu there and a Seal. So go to the water parks, I think. And when you're by rivers, like the water types are there. And when you're in mountainous regions, you get the rock types. So I think it does actually make that distinction. So it's really interesting that we're seeing that sort of technology kind of all come together here. And, Andy, people have been asking us to do a show about this VR technology for a very, very long time. And I think the reason we kind of held off is because so many people, I know Coaster Radio and In the Loop and some other shows, they talked about it as soon as the announcement was made, and they went down the list of, it's going to work on this ride, it's not going to work on this ride. And you and I kind of wanted to reserve judgment until we had a chance to try it out, because now we have a better idea. So I think we're going to do a little bit of that, but you had a chance actually this past weekend to try it out on the Iron Dragon at Cedar Point. Yes, very nice. And I actually had a chance to try it out over 4th of July weekend at Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America, which Six Flags, I guess, was kind of like, is kind of what took the world by storm by announcing they were doing it on like 9 roller coasters or something like that. And since then, they've announced that it's coming to a few more.
Which is kind of
so
weird.
We're now in the double digits.
Because it was actually Matt we met who was the first one to come out and say that Cedar Fair was going to put it out to two coasters this year. And then it's like when announcement season came, Six Flags just jumped the gun and kind of said, you know what, we're putting in all these coasters. And Cedar Fair has been very reserved that we had a few tests on it last year at Canada's Wonderland on Thunder Run. Thunder Run, is it up there?
Thunder Run, yeah. Thunder Run.
Okay. So they tested it out on there. So Cedar Fair has been very slow to roll this out, whereas Six Flags has kind of just said, okay, we're going all in on it. Just some thoughts in general. I know a lot of people, when this was first announced, a lot of people were against it. They're like, well, it's going to ruin the coaster experience. It's going to ruin the queue lines. It's going to ruin, like, very, very negative reaction at the initial outset of this. And I kept telling
almost
people, universally. Yeah, and I kept telling people, reserve judgment until you actually write it. I said, how can you say that you're going to hate it? And then people question the engineering behind it, whether or not, you could sync up the video to the movements of the cars correctly, if people were going to get sick and be puking all over the place. Because we had a few tests of this. Like we said, we'd mentioned Thunder Run, but another big test that we didn't mention was Mac putting it on Blue Fire out at Europa Park. And
that was the first place.
Exactly. If there's an intense coaster, that's Blue Fire. So, I always said, well, if you can put it on Blue Fire, I would almost imagine that you can put it on almost anything. If it works on Blue Fire, it should work on almost any coaster, was my basic logical reasoning. So, maybe let's talk about our experiences a little bit. So I'll start with Iron Dragon. Now, keep in mind that Iron Dragon was even in the we were almost like the trial test of people where we had to sign all these waivers.
They're still in like very early testings of it.
But that changed. I don't know if you saw the recent press release, but they put out a press release and said that in the month of July, starting on the 9th, I think this weekend, they're going to do a reservation system on Iron Dragon, where at noon people can start signing up, and then from 6 to 9 every night, they're going to be running the VR on Iron Dragon at night, every single night.
Okay.
So they're officially moving into that next phase. They're calling the beta test is what they're officially calling it. I was part of the pre-beta test this past weekend where we had to sign all this paperwork. It was only 4 people at a time, so you had to have a group of 4. You basically did the paperwork outside the queue, entered the queue line like anybody else would, wait the line, and then when you got up to the station, I thought it was really ingenious how they had it done. So they had one person taking care of all the VR. Now, there's only 4 of them. So there's one person taking care of all the glasses, washing them, cleaning them, whatever, handing them out to the people. They put you inside of one of the spaces in between the cars so that you would not be in the actual queue. There is strict station management up there. So there was only about 1 or 2 groups in each queue line anyway up in the station. So you were in this middle part. They'd give you all the instructions. You test it. You put it on. You'd fit it to your head. They would ask you if everything's working okay. And then when you were ready to go and the train came into the station, you'd move into the 2 queue lines that they had set apart. In this case, it was car 4 of Iron Dragon. They had those 2 roped off. You'd enter that line and jump right on the coaster. So, maybe that's the first thing to talk about here is I know that the queue line experiences have been very different at different parks where, I've heard people who said down at Over Georgia, it's a nightmare. I've heard people, out west on New Revolution say it was okay, a little bit, troublesome here and there. I've heard people down from Texas Thrill Seekers say that there's actually little to no problem. down at Over Texas.
Yeah, I think Georgia's the place that you're hearing the most negative stuff. I think over Georgia is where you're hearing a lot of the complaints about capacity and whatnot. I think that's the biggest place. In New England, I think somewhat too.
Well, New England's different, but over Georgia, like, let's be honest, Daredevil Dive is probably one of the worst capacity rides ever put into any park, where that line crawled, absolutely crawled with a normal queue and with fast and flash pass. Now you add in the VR stuff, and I can only imagine the wait time on that thing, because it was already super slow, stupid design, where only the ride ops could pull down the lap bars for you. Just absolutely asinine what's going on there. On a normal day, now you add in VR. So I almost want to throw that one out, because I don't think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Because
it's just a bad choice. I mean, we'll get into that a little later, but I mean, that one, I think. Now, I know some people who say it's the perfect choice because it's already got the fighter pilot theme that they go along with this whole New Revolution video. And, you know, it's a ride that's not really a signature ride, but, I mean, it doesn't have the shoulder harnesses, so some people say it's the perfect ride in aspect, but I think more people, you and me, are in agreement that that's a terrible choice for a ride to do it because of it already having capacity issues, and maybe that was their logic as well. This already has a slow-moving line, so we'll just make it go slower, because I think that's one thing that with your experience, it doesn't seem like you have that whole capacity issue because you're only doing it at 4-time, and that's going to be one of the points that I make when I talk about my experience in a few minutes.
So maybe the answer is to solve this problem of the queue line is, you know, at the very beginning when Six Flags Over Texas rolled this out on Shockwave, they actually had, one, it was for season pass holders only, and then two, they actually had a reservation system set up where you would come get a ticket, a little like receipt, and you'd come back at the time you wanted to go. So Iron Dragon's doing that. They're doing, I think at the one part, having the reservation system set up where you sign up in the middle of the day, come back at night, that's going to help with capacity issues. But I also think it's pretty much a good move from a marketing point of view too, because, you know, a lot of people show up to the park early in the morning. They might not stay the whole day. They might not stay till a 6 o'clock or a 9 o'clock reservation time. But now if they have that,
right,
you know, in theory they're going to stay, and now they're going to be buying more food, buying more stuff in the park, and basically spending the whole day there. I kind of like that concept, that you don't have to run this all day long, because it's going to be my assertion that I think all the problems that we've seen with queue lines, that's really the major issue coming out of this, is people don't like the added wait time. And I think you can solve that through having more people in the station. That if you have a manageable system with a manageable amount of people, with a clear process of how to load and how to fix problems before you actually get on the train, I think it's going to go a lot smoother when you actually get up there. So I think if you start combining some of these things, and maybe Cedar points onto it, the reservation system with only having it run part of the day, I think that might be the golden ticket right there. I don't know. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I think, and I got a chance to try it out at Superman Ride of Steel down at Six Flags America, and I noticed some of the same things. So the way they run it is they actually run it from opening till 2 p.m., and then from 2 to 5 there is no VR, and then they run VR again from 5 till closing. And you have the option to do it or not, but everyone who gets in line has the option to do the VR. And now, they don't do VR in the very front row, because the way the Six Flags works is there's a metal plate, at least on Superman Ride of Steel. I don't know how some of the other rides might work. But there's a metal plate mounted to the back of each seat. That's what the glass is, I think. What's the word? Calibrate. That's what calibrates the video for the rider. And what they do when you get up to the station to where the point where you're going to get in your row, They hand you the goggles if you want to do them. They have 3 or 4 people cleaning the goggles. They have the big cabinets with them hanging in there, and the phones are being charged, and all that. And you sit down, and then you put the goggles on. And then they probably have like 4, 5, 6 operators going through helping you calibrate it. And they'll ask you, what do you see? The first thing that we saw was look straight ahead for calibration, and then it said 0%. For Superman, you're in some sort of capsule, and you're seeing the cityscape ahead. So some of them had a tendency. So I was with my aunt, who was next to me, and then also our friend Adam Beard was with us, and he was behind us. Now, he had done it over Georgia, so he had helped us with some tips, because he's done it there. And where else did he do it? He did it over Georgia, and I think he did it at New England at some point, too. I forget where, but he's done it in a couple places. And he said that he's 2 for 4 on it actually working properly. And when he did it over Georgia, I think the first time it didn't work properly. Like, his video shut off halfway through or whatever, and they let him go again, and then it worked. Ours worked flawlessly the first time. I had to recalibrate a second time, like mine turned off while I was in the station. So we were on the very first train of the day. We sat in the second row. Nobody was in the first row because everyone on that first train pretty much was doing the VR. So it was a little bit of an added thrill to have the wind in your face, especially going down the first drop is when Superman starts to fly down. So having the wind in your face, it was a really neat sensation to actually, because when you're used to that sort of thing being on a dark ride, so you don't get the wind in your face. So to get the wind in your face, I think was the first point where I was like, okay, this is really cool. But I'll get to that in a minute. So the loading procedure, the Six Flags ones actually do have a focus wheel. That's one of the things that Adam told me, because he doesn't like to wear his glasses with the headsets on. So if you are a glasses wearer at the park, you can actually take your glasses off, and there is a focus wheel. They will not tell you that it's there, but if you ask them, they'll show you where it is, or they'll put your fingers on it. Just ask them where the focus wheel is, and it's like right in between your eyes. So my aunt took her glasses off and was able to focus it and get a really clear picture. So you don't have to worry about your glasses possibly pushing the goggles good. So I like that about it. Very clear images, and moved flawlessly. Now, we did it once with the VR, once without. We did it with the VR first. And Adam made the good point. He made his first trip to Six Flags over Georgia back in the screen, and he did it with the VR first. And he hadn't ridden the ride before, Daredevil Dive. So he said it was a bit more interesting doing it on a ride that you had not ridden out, and it was a bit more surprise. Having gone to Darien Lake so much and been to Six Flags America before, you know that layout very well, so you know what the ride is going to do. It's like when you ride a ride a certain amount of times, you just get used to the layout. I could not tell you the Kentucky Rumbler layout because I've only ridden it, 3 or 4 times, and I was at that park once. I can tell you what, like, Lightning Racer does all day long. I can tell you what Great Bear does. I can tell you what, Talon does, minute by minute, second by second. And I can do the same with Superman. So when you're doing it on a new ride, I think would be a little bit cooler even, because you have a little bit of interest, and you ride it without the VR later, and then you say, okay, so that's what we did here or something. So I think that was an interesting point. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it definitely enhanced the ride experience. I think it made it more enjoyable. I think it made it much more interesting and made it from, a roller coaster that I've already ridden and I'm just going to ride again because it's a good coaster and I'm at the park, and it really made me excited to ride it again. And I think there's a little bit of rewritability factor here because you can look around while you're on the ride and see different things. So I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's the second helix on Superman. You can look to the left, and like something's happening. Like one of the villains is like taking a police officer or something, and you see something similar to it while you're going up the lift hill. It was really, really interesting, and they put a little trick on the lift hill. So when you're going up the lift hill on Superman, you're tilted up, so you're like reclined, which is interesting. But the video was scrolling up as if you were reclined, but you were lowering, which was it was a very, very interesting trick. And then again, going down the first drop and getting the wind in your face, because you're not used to that on a virtual reality type of ride, like a dark ride. You're used to just being shaken and, tilted, whereas you're getting more of the physical sensations here, which it makes it very, very interesting. The third airtime hill on the Superman rides, that airtime Nirvana hill, that airtime hill that looks way too small, incredible airtime on it. And it's perfectly synced. Now, my video is perfectly synced as well. We've heard some people say it wasn't on their rides, but perfectly synced. And it's interesting because there's a long straightaway before that hill, and you're flying like towards a building, and then you go up and you do a quick like hop, just like the ride does, and you're getting the airtime, and you're seeing this. You're seeing all this go on around you, and you're doing the maneuver, and you're getting the physical sensations, which is very, very different. I very much enjoyed it. Like before, I think this is really going to enhance the ride experience. I think this is going to be really, really cool, and I think it's going to be really, really exciting, but I'm worried about the logistical aspect of it. And coming away from it, I think that's what my thoughts still are, because that first train of the day took more than 10 minutes to get out of the station. I think if you were to implement some sort of system, whether it's reservation or if you make it like a flash pass only or something, I know some people aren't going to like that idea, but if you make it some sort of reservation system, or even, I would even get ready for the haterade to come out on me here. I would even be okay with it being a $10 upcharge to do it. I would probably pay $10 to not have to wait. If they said, okay, if you're doing the, rope off one car, like what they did with Iron Dragon, or maybe even two cars. It's only for 8 people, so you don't have the extended wait time in the station. Maybe it adds a minute or, 30 seconds to a minute to check the 4 or 8 or 6 people or whatever it is. And you run it kind of like Hershey Park has their fast pass system. They have the middle cars roped off. If you're paying the upcharge, you wait in a different line. And if it's the upcharge, then people can just go in those seats regularly from the other rows if they want to. I think that would work. And you find that middle ground. If you make it too expensive, you have nobody doing it. If you make it not expensive enough, you run into just as long of a line. And I don't know that that's necessarily what you want. You don't want people waiting in an hour-long line to do an upcharge attraction. That's part of the reason attraction. So you find that middle ground, whether it's $10 or $15, or maybe you only have a 5 or 10 minute wait to do the VR, but you have to pay that extra money for it. I would pay once at each park to experience it on different coasters, I think, because I enjoyed it that much. The two other complaints that I'll maybe go with are the audio comes out of the phone, and once you're in the ride, the actual ride itself, and you're going fast, you can't hear any of that. So that's a little bit of a bummer, and I think it would be really cool if you had, maybe if you went back to the whole Bizarro at Six Flags New England idea, and you had onboard audio. And the audio you could still have if you're not doing the VR. I know people don't like that, but they've done it before, so what's the big deal, right? And then if you're doing the VR, it just enhances it that much more. The other thing I'll say is while we were sitting still, now it was very humid, and we were sweating, and it was kind of muggy. The lenses on the inside did fog up a little bit while we were sitting in the station. Once we started to move, that cleared up. But that was something I was really concerned about, and I actually took them off to wipe them off right before we went out of the station. So I think maybe that's a little bit of a concern. But once you start to move in the air circuit, that problem kind of becomes solved. So those are my thoughts on it. I really enjoyed it.
That's funny that you say that, because we had the same issue with Iron Dragon, where mine were kind of blurred up a little bit from the glass being fogged up, and my wife said the same thing.
Right.
That during the ride it happened to her as it did with me. So I think because Iron Dragon's a much slower ride, it never had that opportunity to defog. So it did kind of detract from these.
And it's a much shorter ride too.
Yeah. If there was one thing I would complain about, it was that the picture was unclear for whatever reason at different points. Now, being that I've mentioned my wife already, she did it. She's not a roller coaster enthusiast. She actually hates roller coasters for the most part. And she's also one of those people that gets sick on everything that she goes on, that she gets this upset stomach. She absolutely hated the Simpsons ride at Universal. She still complains that that's one of the worst rides she's ever been on. So this concept of the video not syncing with the movements, and that people getting sick off of that, and I know Iron Dragon's a much slower ride than most, but for the most part, if she actually really enjoyed this experience, that she thought it was really cool. She didn't get sick at all. So in my mind, if she's not getting sick off of it, I find it hard to believe that anybody's getting sick off of it. It's almost, I'm a big believer in that when you enter into a ride experience and you think you're going to get sick, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get sick. I'm a big believer in the self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's a mental game.
Yeah. And I think people
I think
that.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is generally, if your video is synced up properly and calibrated properly, I haven't heard of people getting sick. The only people that I've heard saying I got off and was dizzy is because their video wasn't synced with the ride movements perfectly. I can't speak to that because I didn't have that experience. Again, we only did the VR once. And we debated. We said, do you want to go back and do the VR again? And we really wanted to, but I think the general thought was, because Adam's done it 4 times and he had it not work properly twice, our feeling was, well, we're 1 for 1, and we really enjoyed it. Let's not spoil it by now having a bad experience after we really liked it. Let's just ride it without the VR. And honestly, I mean, it's a great roller coaster. I preferred the VR because I think it was different. And the grass is always greener, right? If we had VR in every roller coaster in the world, I'm sure we'd be sitting here saying, it was really nice. I could actually see what was going on. I didn't have these damn goggles on my head. I'm sure that's what we'd be saying. But, so I enjoyed it with the VR, and it was really nice. I didn't find this out till afterwards, but the little button on the side that you use to shoot on the new Revolution, on the Superman one, if you look down, your avatar either has a Batman shirt and like jeans or shorts, and I think that little button on the side, you don't shoot with that, but you can actually change what your avatar person is wearing. I think there's a Superman shirt. There's a couple others. I had a Batman shirt on when I started. So I thought that was interesting, Easter eggs like that. And it's really strange because like I knew my aunt was sitting next to me and turning and reaching out and seeing and being able to I could put my hand on her shoulder, but then I don't see her there, and I just see an empty seat next to me and the rest of the cabin. I thought it was really, really cool. So generally speaking, I really enjoyed it. I really did.
Getting off of it, I wanted to do it again right away. That because like you said, there's so much to take in. That you're working with this 360-degree world. There's so much to look at, and like the first time through,
you can look all the way
like,
around.
Yeah, and it's like the first time through, it's like you're just trying to get acclimated to this world, trying to figure out basically what's going on. It's like going to see Star Wars, where the first time through you're just taking it all in. The second time through, you start looking for the nuances in it. And I really wanted to do it again, but I couldn't because they were the pre-beta test, and I didn't want to fill out the paperwork again, and I don't even know if I would be allowed to. So I just said, I'll just wait till they roll it out. But that's the thing, is like I didn't, when I first walked into this, I was saying on boards and on different places, I'm like, it's something to do once to try to change the pace of things. But having ridden it once, I almost think, I'm not going to sit here and say that I want to do it every time and I want to do it on every coaster. But if I'm riding Iron Dragon, my options are, I can look at the same Blood on the Bayou props that I've seen the last 100 times I've ridden, or I can see this brand new world and try to get somewhat of a new experience every time by how I look, and which ways I look at different points of the ride. Mm-hmm.
Another point, you're gonna be more inclined to ride Iron Dragon too than you otherwise would be.
Absolutely. That Iron Dragon. Well, Iron Dragon's usually a ride that I'll ride because it usually doesn't have a ton of a line on it, in the beginning of the day or end of the day. It's a ride I really enjoy. But another point that this one will piss off the traditionalists, as I call them, that when I was writing this,
right,
it completely took me out of the coaster realm. I did not get the sense that I was on a roller coaster anymore. It fully immersed me into this world and what was going on.
Right.
I'm looking around, trying to see what's going on. I completely lost sense of where I was on the coaster. When you hit that second lift hill on Iron Dragon, it's usually like, oh, I'll just wait here and sit here and do nothing. The story's still going on. I'm completely immersed in that. Going through the weaving in the last half of Iron Dragon. I felt it because you're on the ride, but I wasn't visualizing the coaster as I'm riding in this virtual world. So I think from that perspective, that a lot of the traditionalists are right in the fact that that you are taken out of being on a roller coaster, that you're put into this new world, and I think that's a great thing. I think that's an amazing thing. I love that aspect of it, and I was really surprised getting off, and I thought about it. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't, I didn't realize this element or that element. Like all the elements, like you said, they're all part of the story. That they're there, but they're part of the story. So I would actually like to try it on a ride that I don't know as well to see if that's still the case and see if it's an even better experience. Because I absolutely loved, and a lot of people have done the Iron Dragon thing, and the story is kind of still secret, so I'm not going to give it away here. But it's exactly what you would think it was. There's nothing like super, out of this world about it. I thought the CGI on it was really well done, which was another, fear that a lot of people were saying that, the Six Flags CGI was kind of shoddy. I don't know about that, but the CGI here looked pretty good to me. What I would expect it to do. So I can only give this new technology pretty high marks, and I think if we've both said that the main issue is the logistics. How do you get people on the ride, seated in a reasonable amount of time? And I think we've presented the people with a number of different solutions here. I'm not a huge fan of the upcharge, because the upcharge, I'm not going to want to do that every single time. That's the problem is. And this is a piece of technology that I'm going to want to do every time, at least once during the day or during a trip or something. I want to try out the VR, something like a slingshot or a ripcord. I don't have to do that every time. I'll do it once, maybe in forever, and be done with it. But this is kind of like one of those things where I think people are going to want to do this more and more, and I think making it upcharge might make it out of the reach of people. Even if you do get to skip the line, maybe you do a VR flash pass where, assuming that a park gets more than one.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know if a park, they start rolling out on more than one coaster and the traditionalists lose their minds and swear off coasters for the rest of their lives. I don't know.
Well, and again, I mean, most people know or will call me more of a roller coaster purist. I mean, and especially like a wood coaster purist. I like your traditional wood coasters more than, some of these newer ones. Not to say they're bad rides. I mean, these RMC coasters, RMC wood coasters are really nice rides.
I just thought of something. I just thought of a way that you can make me not fall asleep on the Beast. You put VR on it. You put VR on the Beast. And then I won't fall asleep.
I think the roller coaster purist in me was always worried, but I don't 100% love it just yet. The experience part of it I loved. I thought it was flawless. The concerns that I have and the parts that I don't love come with the logistics, and I think that's what we said. I think that's what we said beforehand, and I think we were right mark there. So some people if I want to, some people originally my thought was, well, if I want to do a virtual reality ride, why don't I just go on a dark ride? But then I started to think about it more and said, well, I'll get more of the physical sensations here. I'll get the speed sensations that you wouldn't get on a dark ride unless you have the fan effect, but it's still not the same thing. You get the G-forces on this. It's a much, much different experience than just being in a car and being on a simulator. So I enjoyed it more than I thought I would from that aspect. The things that we've laid out, the whole capacity, the logistics, and to some extent the audio, and I think those are challenges that have yet to be solved. I think we've laid out some ideas for how they might be solved. So we'll see if there's... Now that we've seen this kind of roll out, we'll see if there's maybe a little bit of a reaction for next season. And maybe they go the next step into enhancing this and maybe adjusting it so that maybe we don't have the bad capacity issues that we're seeing at some of the parks. I don't know, but I am very, very intrigued by the future of this. I love the concept. I really like the concept of and what is possible with it. I don't know that the logistical side of it is quite mature enough yet to say, yes, we definitely need this at every park. But I think if we can solve the challenges that we've talked about, I think this is something that might work pretty well for some rides. So, I mean, that's my takeaway is I really, really enjoyed it. There's a few challenges that have to be solved, but I don't think there's anything that's insurmountable at this point.
Well, Danny, I know you have to get back to hunting your Pokemon here, and I'm just seeing, it seems like every park is, Six Flags Great America just released a Pokemon guide. Wow.
Oh yeah, they're doing. A lot of parks are doing that too. Like on Twitter, like Dorney Park and Worlds of Fun are all like, "Hey, tweet us pictures of the Pokemon you caught in the park."
Yeah, but this
here's an idea.
Wait, hold on.
What are they doing?
This actually gives you real tips of how to play the game, and being that I'm not, it said don't waste your time at Pokestops. And so when you're at the park, okay.
Really.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that says turn off your AR, your augmented reality, because it uses up your battery more.
Yes.
It says
I've turned it off.
Visit every Pokestop. You get 50 XP, even if you don't pick up any items, but don't waste your time at the Pokestops. And they're giving you real tips of how to play. I love this. How to play Pokemon Go.
Now here's a thought here. if this Pokemon, so there's already talks. I don't know how legit this is, but I'm hearing that there's also like a Pokemon Go Plus in the works already. So here's a thought. This is Nintendo, right? And Universal recently acquired the whole Nintendo thing. What are the odds that we start to see some sort of, I mean, seriously, could you imagine if there was some sort of virtual reality Pokemon experience at Universal? I mean, would that be as big as Harry Potter? I don't know. I mean, it's a different audience for sure.
Well,
it's a different audience.
I'll say
but
this.
It's a really big audience.
When we were discussing how if Universal was to ever get rid of Marvel and what you would put in its place, and Nintendo was the answer, Spider-Man, a Pokemon overlay of Spider-Man would probably work. It probably would work.
You could probably do something pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I want that to happen, but if you had to, I don't want it to happen because I love Spider-Man. But I mean, if you had to, everyone was like, oh well, Spider-Man would turn into Mario Kart, and it's like, I could think of a better application for Mario Kart. Pokemon would be better for that ride system, I think.
Yeah.
Some sort of big Pokemon battle in there and everything. You probably don't know Team Rocket because you're not. I mean, you might have heard the name, but we don't know the whole Team Rocket storyline and everything. Oh man, think of the possibilities that you could do.
Oh, it would be awesome.
And I also heard that they could put VR on Incredible Hulk, and it would be like the Donkey Kong roller coaster, and you'd be getting shot out of the cannon.
Are you serious? Oh my god, they even listed all the Pokestops at Great America.
Oh, at Hershey Park, every roller coaster was a Pokestop, and almost every major restaurant was a Pokestop, and then like there were gyms throughout the park too. I mean, we would ride over Pokeballs at one point, and we were catching Pokemon in the park.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that concludes us here today. So hopefully we'll see what happens with the VR and the AR. And, I didn't even get to talk about the battle for Cedar Point, but that's, a fun little thing to do, too.
Hey, if people like this show, maybe we'll do another one, because we didn't even talk about, we didn't even get to talk about some of the other rides that Six Flags doing it on, and they're rolling it out on some newer ones like Nitro and Raging Bull, and, we've got this, Thunder Run up to Canada's Wonderland. I might be able to try that one later on in the season, certainly maybe in September if they're running it still for the Ace event. So, maybe we'll revisit this at the end of the season.
So, as always, I am Andy Robarczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.